Then I'm going to see if I can get this to stay. Uh-oh. Who can do that? It didn't look like it took that much to undo it, but I may have messed it up.
No. I think we're going to need it. Well, here he is. You're okay.
Oh, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Wow, what an amazing, amazing welcome. And what a crowd. Goodness. It is so great to be here. Thank you all so much. And I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank, is there more light here, Marielle? Just so I can take a look. Yeah, turn them up a little. Yeah. I would just want to thank Third Place Commons. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We so appreciate Celia and everybody who makes this place an amazing space to get together and to meet and to eat and to greet and to be in community. And I think that that's one of the things that I love about being home is I get to come back into my community right here at home. And I'm just so grateful to all of you. This is my 128th town hall since coming into office. And one of the things I love to do is ask who's coming to one of my town halls for the first time. Oh my God, look at that. If you're in the front row, turn around and keep them up, keep them up. You have to get a picture of this because this is so beautiful. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you so much for coming out. And all of you that are here for your second or third or maybe 10th or 20th or 50th town hall, let's give you a hand as well because we appreciate you as well. I say that a lot, but it really is so important that people are engaging in our democracy and coming out and sharing your thoughts with me and hearing, what's going on because this is a crazy time and it's really hard to make sense of most of it. And it is more important than ever that people are engaged in a way that we've never maybe had to be. I mean, I know we've said in the past that this is a really important election, this is a really important year, but this is different. This is really different, and so it just really matters that you are here and that we're going to have this time together tonight to just talk a little bit about what I've been doing. Now, you've been watching some of these videos, so you get to see me and how I question in the Judiciary Committee or the Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you. But this is as much a part of my job as that is. And so I take this part really seriously. We have an amazing constituent services team in our office. My staff is all around, by the way. Please give it up for them. They are so remarkable. And so before I get started on the big issues, if there are any specific things that you are dealing with that relate to federal agencies, please come and talk to us. We will do everything we can to help. It's not quite as easy with this administration as it has been in the past, but we have had still a lot of successes and we will try to track things down for you, and we still have the ability to get a lot of things done in navigating these federal agencies. So I hope we can help you get what you deserve and track down the answers you need. There's a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to cover a few things and then we'll go to your questions. And that's always the biggest part of the town hall. And hopefully we'll get through as many of them as we can, or most of them. But if we don't get through, please feel free to just get in touch with me and we'll try to answer whatever question you have or take whatever comment you have. So I want to start with the Epstein files and the Bondi hearing, which I assume many of you watched. It's been all over the news, obviously. And I have to tell you that the thing that has inspired me the most has been these survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. And it was a sex trafficking ring, it was global. It is clear to me that it was full of depraved people who, mostly men, but not all, who were raping, abusing, joking about, knowledgeable about these predators and pedophiliacs who were a part of this ring. And it's been horrific to read the files, the Epstein files, including the unredacted files. And I'm going back a little bit early next week so that I can spend a full day at the Department of Justice going through more of the files. It's very difficult to search them because you have to have document numbers and you have to know what you're looking for. And there are millions and millions, and that's only half of what the Department of Justice was supposed to release. So we have a long way to go to get to real accountability and justice, but these survivors have been remarkable. You know, it's like they're shaking the earth, and it is finally starting to reveal the cracks and to get us to a place where we can take on the Epstein class, what's been called the Epstein class of rich, powerful people who literally created a fantasy island and a real and figurative fantasy island where they could do whatever they wanted without any accountability, without any attention at all to morals or to any of the strictures that we think we live by. And some of these people were the most powerful people. They were sultans and princes and top government officials and even prime ministers and people who were the top of academic institutions, law firms, financial institutions, people who determine policy for us every single day. And to think that that is, and they were of both political parties. This was not, unfortunately, not something that we can just say was from one party. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that this is something that is going to require continued effort to get to justice for these survivors, not only the ones in the Epstein ring, but also the ones that are survivors of sexual assault and abuse anywhere in the world, because everyone is looking at the United States. And in other countries, they have investigations that have started. They have actually taken this on in a big way. They forced accountability for some of the people that were involved. But here in the United States, we have yet to do that. And so that is and has been a big focus of mine and will continue to be. And I think it is important also to recognize that there is a direct tie between what's happening in the Epstein files and what's happening in the cover up in all kinds of other arenas as well. And it is also tied to affordability and to general living standards and conditions of people in the United States. Because when you have this class of people who are making these kinds of immoral decisions about the world and are in these high ranking positions, you begin to understand how it is that we, as the richest country in the world, now have the most wealth and income inequality that we have seen since the Great Depression. So they're not unlinked, even though they feel like perhaps they're unlinked. They're actually quite tied together when you see some of the people who are involved and who served in top positions in democratic administrations and democratic institutions. The other big area that I have been really focused on, as you may know, is immigration. And for those of you who are just getting to know me, you may not know that I spent 20 years outside as an activist, starting the organization called One America. It was called Hate Free Zone right after 9/11. And so I've worked on this issue for decades as an immigrant rights activist. Thank you. And so I know the issue very well. And now I am the top Democrat on the immigration subcommittee. And when we take over the gavels in November and get back into power, then I'll be the chair of the immigration subcommittee. Boy, am I looking forward to that. So this has been, and look, I've been through a lot post 9/11. You know, we sued the Bush administration at that time as Hate Free Zone. We stopped the deportation of thousands of Somalis across the country, including right here in our home cities. But I have never seen anything like this. I have never, ever seen anything like this, because this is not about immigration. This really is about the militarization of our federal government against the people of the United States. And And Donald Trump may have said that he was going to go after the worst of the worst. He may have convinced a bunch of people that that's what he was going to do. And people who are frustrated, rightly, with the fact that the immigration system has been broken for 30 years and we haven't modernized it at all. We're still operating under the same quotas that we did 30 years ago. There's a lot of frustration around that. And I think he figured out how to use it to his benefit and said, I'm going to go after the worst of the worst. And some people bought into that. But what we are seeing today is nothing like that. Every single day in America now, under this administration, there are 73,000 immigrants who are incarcerated in for-profit detention facilities across the country. 73,000. In the Republicans' big bad betrayal bill last year, that's what I call that bill, the big bad betrayal. That was the one that stripped healthcare from Medicaid from 15 million people, stripped 22 million of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, a lot of things in that bill that were a betrayal. But one of the things that I talked about a lot at the time was that that bill put $175 billion into ICE and CBP. $175 billion. And now ICE is spending billions of that money to buy more incarceration facilities, warehouses across the country, to hold tens of thousands more immigrants. And even if you take ICE's own statistics, 85% of all the immigrants who are being held in those incarceration facilities have committed no criminal violations at all. And so these are people who are being picked up, who are green card holders, who are US citizens. In some cases in Minnesota, what we saw at the Whipple Detention Center is that there are cells in the immigrant incarceration facilities that are designated for US citizens who are pulled out of the car by their hair and windows smashed and doors bashed in at people's homes. Those people, simply because they look a certain way or because they speak a certain language, are being taken, if they're US citizens, and being held at those detention facilities without charges, shackled. And that's just the US citizens. Imagine if they're doing that to US citizens, what they're doing to folks who are undocumented, who have lived here for 20 and 30 years, never committed a crime, been a part of their communities, have US citizen children. And of course, what we saw was the murder of Renee Good and Alex Preddy that was so clearly captured on video, and then the lies of Trump, Kristi Noem. By the way, Kristi Noem has to go. She's got to be fired and punished for she's better with that. You're right, the two all have to go. Those videos, I think, shocked the conscience of the nation, and the strength of the Minnesotans has just been amazing. Just amazing. And a week after Renee Good's murder, as the top Democrat on the immigration subcommittee, because the Republicans would never hold any hearings on any of this stuff, I decided I was just going to hold my own hearings. And I would call them accountability hearings. I've been doing them since last summer. And because of that, we were able to, within a week of Renee Good's murder, I was able to take a field hearing to Minnesota. And we took 29 members of Congress from all over the country and went to Minnesota, and we were able to hear from directly impacted people who had been incarcerated, who had been shackled, who had been arrested, also from law enforcement who testified about how this was hurting their ability to do their job. There are 3,000 CBP and ICE agents in Minnesota. The Minneapolis Police Department has something like 800. So you can imagine what this meant to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the Twin Cities to have this kind of a surge and this inability to really protect their own citizens from the federal government. And so that is why we have been very clear as Democrats that we are not going to continue to fund DHS. Without really substantial reforms. What does that mean for somebody like me that's worked on immigration for so long? Judicial warrants. You should have a judicial warrant. Not only should you follow the Constitution and have a judicial warrant to bash in someone's door. By the way, the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution doesn't differentiate between a citizen and a non-citizen, right? So you have to get a judicial warrant if you're going to go onto private property. But in addition to that, these roving patrols that they've been doing, where they have a warrant that's just signed by somebody at ICE to pick up somebody, that's not okay, because what they're doing is they're just racially profiling people. So we're saying no more of these roving patrols and these warrantless arrests. You got to have judicial warrants for that as well. And there are over 300 judges who have ruled on these illegal detentions, ordered people to be released, and the Trump administration is not obeying their orders. So this is the state we're in, and I think, you know, this is an issue that is important to every single person in this country, immigrant or not, because to see the cruelty, which is the point, to see the lawlessness, the unconstitutionality of what is happening, and the refusal of the Trump administration even to listen to the courts is stunning. And we have to say no to that. And so we have very little leverage in Congress. The Senate has some, because they do have to get 60 votes on these bills. And so we are urging Senate Democrats to hold out, just like the House did, and House Democrats did, and to make sure that we get substantial reform so they don't just keep killing people on the streets with your taxpayer dollars. So there's a lot to do on immigration. I'll switch topics and go to rising costs, but I want to make the link here, because when they are spending $175 billion on ICE and CBP, guess what they're not spending it on? Your healthcare. They're not spending it on making sure that Social Security payments increase to match the cost of inflation. They're not spending it on making sure that grocery prices are coming down. They're not spending it on a whole bunch of other things that benefit the American people. And so I think we have to be really clear that they made a choice. They made a choice to spend it on these things and on tax breaks for billionaires, and to not spend it, not just to not spend it on your healthcare, but to strip people of their healthcare. Because 15 million Americans got kicked off of Medicaid because of the big bad betrayal bill. And 22 million Americans are estimated to lose healthcare because of the refusal to renew the ACA tax credits. And so if you look at healthcare today in this country, it is insane that in the richest country in the world, we have so much medical debt. We have so many millions of people who can't afford healthcare. In the latest Siena New York Times poll, 50% of Americans can't afford healthcare. 60% of Americans can't afford education. This is the richest country in the world. And that is why I am more convinced than ever that we need universal health care. And that's why my bill, Medicare for All, is the only way to do that. And, you know, they've destroyed the existing healthcare system so much. There's no contradiction in my pushing for the extension of the tax credits until we get Medicare for All, by the way. I am fully in line with, we need to do whatever we can to save healthcare today, but we also need to push for a universal healthcare system where we have a government insurance card and you have healthcare from birth until death. And it's comprehensive. And by the way, it includes your ears, eyes, right, and teeth. It includes dental vision and hearing. It includes reproductive health. It includes long-term care. And my Medicare for All bill is the only bill in Congress that actually has a vision for how to do that and has really thought through how do we support rural hospitals? How do we change the payment system so that Medicare is reimbursing at the rate that we need to be reimbursing at? How do we make sure that people have all the pieces of healthcare that they need? And the only thing that may be a silver lining out of all of this is because they've destroyed the healthcare system so much, Medicare for All is more popular than it's ever been. It's always been popular, but if you lobbed the private insurance company a tax on Medicare at people, you would see the polling numbers would drop because people would get nervous. They were like, oh, I don't know, what if I can't pay, blah, blah, blah. And now what we're finding is 90% of Democrats support Medicare for All, 60% of independents, and 1 in 3 Republicans, even in swing districts that went for Trump. So this is the direction we have to go. I'm going to continue to push for that. There are so many things that this administration's reckless trade wars have done, and because of that, because of the ways in which they've just robbed from working people to pay for billionaires, unemployment is at the highest in the highest it's been in 4 years. Job growth last month was reported at only $15,000 jobs a month compared to 186,000 in 2024. So you can see the drop in jobs, you can see the rise in unemployment, and of course the rise in grocery prices, right? Everyone is feeling that from beef to coffee. And so across the board, people are really struggling. And I'm gonna end with this piece before going to your questions and comments. I know things seem bleak, but I am an organizer, and I do believe that strength comes in times of crisis, and that it takes a community, it takes a commons to come together and to demand something different. And when Benjamin Franklin was asked whether this was a republic, he said, it's a republic if you can keep it. And I think we in the United States of America haven't had to really think about what that means in quite some time. And so we kind of thought, right, if you were like me, I even thought that we had some checks and balances built in to our Constitution, right? We were somewhat protected. Who thought that? Go ahead, raise your hand. Yeah, yeah, me too. I thought that. Did the rest of you really not believe that? Wow. Skeptics. What we're seeing is that those founding framers were smart, but they weren't all knowing. And they made an assumption that the check of Congress in Article 1, remember, don't ever say we're co equal branches of government. We are Article 1. Congress is Article 1, right? Article 1 is big in number of pages. Article 2 is pretty small. That's presidential power. So we are supposed to be the first check on government, but on an authoritarian executive. But it requires that the people that you elect of the majority party actually care about the Constitution and their responsibility more than they care about the cult figure that is the authoritarian. And if they don't, then that check doesn't work because you need a majority in Congress to get anything done. And it's even worse in the Senate where you need 60 votes. And so 40 people out of 100 who represent 12% of the country's population get to make a decision that you're not going to raise the minimum wage, that you're not going to provide universal childcare, that you're not going to convict a twice impeached president. And so that check just goes away because it becomes very hard to implement it. We're going to do everything we can, but the reality is we don't have the majority, and we don't have the majority because the people from the majority party are part of the authoritarians' plan for power, for complete power. Second check is the courts. And on the courts, a skeptical bunch in here. I haven't even said the Supreme Court words yet. But I want to tell you that on the courts, the Oh, and I forgot, I said good news, and then I didn't tell you the good news about Congress. There are cracks starting to emerge. We got 17 Republicans to vote with us on extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, right? And that went to the Senate, and now the Senate hasn't done anything. With tremendous respect to the senators, I always call the Senate the place where all good things go to die. So we're still waiting for some action from the Senate. But we are starting to see some cracks. The Epstein Files Transparency Act happened because 4 Republicans crossed over and signed what's called the discharge petition, which allows us to bring a bill to the floor even if the speaker is opposing it. And so that's how we got the Epstein Files Transparency Act to the floor, because some Republicans broke. On tariffs, some Republicans voted with us last week to deny Donald Trump the ability to use his executive authority to set these crazy tariffs. That will go to the Senate as well, and we'll see what happens. We probably don't have enough votes to override a veto from the White House. But these are cracks that are important to see, because they show that it is starting to backfire on the administration, what they're doing, and it's because of people in the room and across the country who are speaking out and standing up. The second check is the courts. And look, once we get to the Supreme Court, whole different story. Too many of those members who are bought and paid for by those billionaires, the rich people that are lobbying in front of them. That's why I believe that when we have power again, we should expand the Supreme Court, and we should set term limits for Supreme Court justices. And we should pass my bill around ethics and transparency with the Supreme Court, because that's the only court in the land that doesn't have to abide by any of those things. So those are the things we know we have to do, but we know that the Supreme Court is not really our friend on many, many issues. But I will tell you that the lower courts are doing a pretty phenomenal job. They really are. And I know it's kind of getting lost, but there's 150 actions that have been blocked by the courts, another 107 that are pending. Some of those judges are Trump-appointed judges. So important to know that. And Washington, of course, thanks to Attorney General Nick Brown, Governor Bob Ferguson, we've again been leading the way in lawsuits. So we've already filed 5 lawsuits as the state of Washington. We've been the most prepared of all states. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's true also. And we've protected tens of billions of dollars in cuts to Washington in funding because of those lawsuits. So we have been doing a really important job there. But the third and most important check, and the positive piece that I wanted to bring to you all, is the public. We are seeing engagement at a level that we have not seen in so long. And how do we know that that's working? I don't know how many of you have done my resistance lab training that I do. Wonderful. We've trained 25,000 people in all 50 states by doing that. You can go to resistancelab.us to sign up. It's on the campaign side, so I won't talk too much about it here, but I will tell you that we need to learn as a community what it means to stand up to an authoritarian leader. And the only time around the world that people have been successful in kicking out authoritarian leaders is when we have that kind of work at the public level. That's really, it's not the courts, it's not legislation, it really is the public. And that's not me putting it on you and saying your problem. That's me saying we all have to be in this together. And as frustrated as you might be with what's not happening in Congress, what's not happening in the courts, it really comes down to our society to stand up and fight back. And it is working. I want you to take hope and power from the fact that it is working. Why do I say that? You can look at polling. You can look at the fact that Donald Trump is underwater in the polls. This is the most precipitous decline of a US president in a long time. And he's underwater everywhere. And if you're wondering about that, just look at deep red Texas that had a state Senate race where the Democratic candidate won by, I think it was 14 or 17 points. And it wasn't because more Democrats turned out, actually, and looking at the numbers, it was because independents voted overwhelmingly, and so did some Republicans. So you are seeing these cracks starting to appear. And you can see that some of the numbers, even on immigration, which was a tough issue, he kind of took that issue and weaponized it in a way that was so cruel and unfair and lying. But even 1 in 5 voters who backed the president in 2024 think that immigration enforcement has gone too far. A majority of Americans do not support ICE anymore. And 58% of Americans disapprove of the handling of the economy. 64% aren't satisfied with the way that the administration has addressed cost of living issues. So across the board, we are seeing a level of dissatisfaction that I think is the culmination of, or not the culmination, but maybe the beginning of voters putting together what it means to have an authoritarian, white supremacist regime that wants to take every lever of government and use it only for the benefit of that authoritarian leader and their cronies and against the American people. Those are the threads that people are starting to put together. And it wouldn't happen without you all doing what you do, showing up to town halls, going to hands-off rallies, doing mutual aid work, talking to your community centers, your places of worship, wherever it is that you hang out, writing letters to the editor. No action is too small. And I will end by saying that hopelessness and powerlessness are tools of the oppressor. That is what people want you to feel, is hopeless and powerless. And I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't feel that way sometimes. I do. I do. Of course, we're human. We look at what's happening and we just can't believe it. But I will also tell you that action is the best antidote to hopelessness and powerlessness. And that is what we need you to keep doing. And that is what we are going to keep doing until we take back our democracy and we deliver the justice and the accountability that we all deserve and will fight for. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You all look so beautiful. You really do. This is such a fabulous sight to see. It's just giving me so much energy to go back and grill some of these people some more. All right, so so we have questions now. Time for you to ask questions or make a comment, and we've got 2 microphones. We have done 128 town halls, so we know how to handle you people. So they are going to hold the microphone for you. Are we doing lines or? Yeah. Okay, so you're going to line up on the sides if you don't mind. I think that's the easiest way. And then they are going to hold the microphone for you, and they have a little timer. I think it's a minute. I can't remember what it is. Okay, it's a minute. So you will have a minute to express your deeply felt sentiment or question, and we'll try to get as many in as possible. And why don't we start over here with Michael? Are they not working? Oh, the mics apparently are not working yet. So, all right, how's everybody doing? You got snow up here. What's happening? There's snow on the ground. I was so surprised. Okay, we're good. Are they both working? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I want to be greedy and ask more than one question, but I'll keep it to one. Thank you very much. A lot of our norms have been shaken. A lot of the things that we thought were impossible have happened. We have an election coming up, and I think that's one of the #1 places that I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
And we have norms again that have been broken. We have laws that have been broken. What are we looking at this fall? How are we going to be protected? Because our country's become very militarized, and I am very concerned about that. Not necessarily so much here in Washington,
Yeah,
because I know the states control a lot of that.
right.
I'm originally from Florida and from other places, and I am worried that there's gonna be a lot of intimidation,
Yeah.
and also older folks who can't vote
Yes.
because things are being taken away. So, all right, I'll wrap it up with that.
No, that's such an important question. It's probably the top question I get asked, along with, ones around immigration. This is a serious issue, and I would say we're dealing with it in three ways. One, we're doing everything we can in the states that we control to just really shore up all of our election integrity. And obviously we're lucky in Washington State because we have vote by mail. And so that is really helpful. But you're absolutely right on the fact that Florida, Texas, I mean, Trump has actually come out and said, I only need 15 states, right? He wants to nationalize elections, which, by the way, is unconstitutional. And so in those states, there is an effort that sometimes we as members of Congress are part of amicus briefs or whatever, to really challenge state laws that those legislatures are trying to pass. And we've had a decent amount of success with stopping some of the voter restriction laws that those states are trying to pass. And then third, look, we're trying to get ready for that election. And this is hard. That means investing in poll workers, because a lot of poll workers got so intimidated by what happened in the last election that they've left. We need to make sure we're training people up, that we're providing them with appropriate safety, that we are really staffing up those efforts. But we also, I think, just need to do everything we can to get the community to show up, in and vote. And this is the hard part, where it is a real threat. And it's like we have to keep a foot in each of these two worlds all the time. I feel this way every day, actually, but certainly around voting. One world where we're saying anything could happen, because things are happening today that none of us thought could happen 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so we've got to be alert and vigilant, but at the same time, we have to keep a foot in the other world that says, let's make sure everybody knows that we will have a fair election. Because we don't want people to think that there's no chance of a fair election, therefore I'm not going to vote. And so holding those two things at the same time, vigilance and preparation, but also, yes, we are going to win in November, is really, really important. And then the last strategy that we've been doing is really around the redistricting wars. They thought that they were going to redistrict and win, and look at how that's backfired, right? Like Florida thought that they were going to do all this stuff and win. And California, what about Prop 50? I mean, that was amazing turnout, and really well structured to say, if you don't do it, we won't either. But we're not going to go to the battlefield and have a butter knife while you're pitching cannons at us. Is that a good analogy? I'm a bit of a peacenik, so I'm not good about the battlefield analogies. But we've got to fight with the same kind of fire and energy, but with values.
I would just like to thank you for everything you do. On behalf of all of us, and especially my grown children, I have no idea how you do it. You're an inspiration.
Thank you.
And I would like to yield the document.
That is so sweet. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hello. Thank you so much for this straight talk. It's so refreshing. I think a lot of us have been waiting for the Democrats to say things like the big betrayal bill. I'm a Democrat. I read a lot of news. I've never heard that until I saw you do it at the Resistance Life. By the way, shout out to the Resistance Life. I learned a lot there. My question is this: how do we amplify your kind of straight talking voice and get more attention to these messages that I think resonate with people? And in particular on this question of voting,
Yeah.
I think some of the predecessors in the Democratic Party who dealt with shenanigans during voting, such as Al Gore and Biden, they were reluctant, perhaps because they were older generation, to have people question the integrity of the vote.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
So now we need to restore the integrity of the vote. Here in Washington State, we have individually numbered ballots mailed to every registered voter, and we have paper trails, and it's auditable. why can't we have the Auditable Vote Act be proposed so we can go on offense
Yeah.
against the SAVE Act and say,
Yeah.
individual numbered ballots, don't trust the damn machines.
Yeah.
I think it's a good message because this is one of 2 states where the polls actually match the vote
Yeah.
totals here in Colorado.
Right.
And I wonder, can we regain some offensive ground on this?
Yeah, so important. And before the last election, I was actually working with a coalition that was trying to get more states to pass vote by mail. Because I kind of feel like we got it down now. There were some early mistakes and there were some concerns. And look, I was not a U.S. citizen for 17 years, right? It took me 17 years to get my citizenship. And when I finally got my citizenship, there were no little booths to go into anymore. I couldn't pull the little lever. I really wanted to do that, but I've gotten over that now. I really do think, I'm joking about it, but I think that early on there was some, and I think Colorado does a particularly good job actually of having some polling stations for older folks and people who really need to come in for various reasons and having that sense of community. But listen, vote by mail is amazing. And we have gotten really good at figuring out how to translate, our mail information, organizations on the ground that are doing community education. There's a lot of work that has to go into it, but we know what it is now. And so I do think you're right that that's what we should be moving to. And again, we're going to have this divide between states that are democratically run and want people to vote and states that don't want people to vote, which they have very clearly said they don't want people to vote, right? The SAVE Act, which you referred to, but for those of you who haven't been following it in the same way, this is the bill that got passed off the House floor last week. I did not vote for it. The vast majority of Democrats didn't vote for it. And it would essentially make voting harder. It puts all these restrictions in place. It requires a birth certificate or a passport to vote. And the reality is 50% of Americans don't have a passport. And birth certificates are very difficult if you got married and changed your name, that birth certificate is not going to match anymore. So for a lot of women, that's going to kick us out. I didn't change my name, but if you did. And so those are all concerns. And then, it's all based on so-called fraud. Well, the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative right-wing institute, has a really good database up that you can look at where they track voting violations of non-citizens, because of course they're blaming it on immigrants. If you want to distract, blame it on an immigrant. And so yes, it's 19 or something instances. I forget what the exact number is, but it's tiny, really tiny. So this is all just lies and misinformation. And I think that being on the offense is something we really need to do. And, look, I have a lot of respect for people who worked at a time when bipartisanship was a real thing. I know we theoretically all want it, but if you have one party that is literally crazy and fascist and racist and authoritarian, then no, it's not the way to go. And we do have to be a lot more sharp in our messaging. And I feel like I criticize my own country when I feel like we're not living up to our ideals. We should criticize our own party when we're not living up to our ideals and push for us to be a stronger, bolder, better Democratic Party.
Thanks a bunch. This is a money question.
Yeah.
I read the Seattle Times every day, and I'm confused about Trump suing everybody.
Yes.
So, in theory, are we paying to
Yes.
be sued for us?
Yes.
Weird. Okay.
Yes. I am so happy I could clarify that for you. We, the taxpayers, are paying for Donald Trump to sue we, the taxpayers, for tens of billions of dollars. And on top of that, there are 8 US senators who voted to also be able to sue for $8 million because their cell phones were tapped, which they weren't, by the way. That was just a big lie. But they're perfectly fine with Pam Bondi spying on me. But they want to be able to sue the government for, yes, I mean, make it make sense. The corruption of this administration is stunning. We've tried to do, on social media, we have a series that I do called It's for the Billionaires. And it's like a 3-minute thing where I go into all the ways that they do insane things. And it's all for the billionaires. It's all for Trump's crypto, family venture, all the ways that they've taken the things that that the Biden administration had done. Lena Khan and the FTC and the CFPB had done such amazing work, and the DOJ had done such amazing work on suing corporations that were ripping off consumers. The Trump administration has overturned all of those. So that means he's taking billions of dollars of money that would have gone to taxpayers and turning it over and allowing the corporations to get away with anything. So yeah, I'm sorry to be so clear to your question.
Representative Jayapal, what keeps me up at night is the private detention facilities, AKA gulags, where people go in without due process and they stay as long as the private corporations or whoever it is who are controlling them decide they are going to stay. I wanted to know what the Democrats are doing about this. And also the fact that ICE is being socialized for cruelty. And for that reason, I'm interested in movement towards abolishing ICE in the form that it is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really important question and close to my heart. The minute I got into Congress in 2017, thank you for electing me there, I introduced a bill called Dignity for Detained Immigrants that gets rid of all for-profit detention facilities. There should not be these prisons that exist for the profit of these detention contractors. And by the way, these are the same, a lot of these are defense companies. A lot of them are, corporations that have built, that are part of the defense industry in some way, shape, or form. And now they contributed huge amounts of money to Donald Trump's last campaign, and they are profiting like crazy. Because when it costs, $230 to $400 to detain somebody, to incarcerate somebody for one night, that's your taxpayer dollars, yet again, you can have alternatives to detention because the immigration system is a civil system. It is not a criminal system. It is a civil system, and violations of immigration law are handled administratively. It's why immigrants don't get public defense attorneys, right? You can hire one if you can afford one, or if you can, if you're lucky enough to get a pro bono one, but you're not provided with a public defender in the immigration system because it's not supposed to be a criminal justice system, even though immigration law is second only in complexity to tax law. And so it's very difficult to navigate it. And so what has happened, and it's why also since I got into Congress, I have voted against the funding for DHS every single time, because I saw that we were just continuing under Republican administrations and Democratic administrations to fund this lawless agency and ICE and CBP within it. Now, ICE and CBP do not need to exist, and they should be completely dismantled. Do not forget that they have not been around forever. This was all only created in the post 9/11 days. It was the post Patriot Act days when everyone was, really concerned about our safety and security, and they created DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. And they took a bunch of agencies from all over government, and they stuck them all together and created new agencies, including the one called ICE and CBP. ICE immigration enforcement used to be within the Department of Justice. And it was really primarily immigration services, but there was an immigration enforcement part, but it had to do with administrative enforcement. And CBP didn't really exist the way it does now. FEMA was an independent agency established in 1976 by President Carter. It was never intended to be political. And it was supposed to be independent so that it could just respond to, disasters across the country. All these agencies got lumped together, and DHS is now this unwieldy, lawless agency with a culture of cruelty. And so it has to be completely dismantled. We don't need DHS to exist as it does. ICE and CBP don't need to exist as they do. And we really need to get back to having agencies that serve the function they are supposed to serve, not the function of cruelty and lawlessness.
I'm a non-binary person,
Yeah,
and I have son who's trans,
yeah,
and I want to thank you for what you do for
absolutely,
uh,
of course.
I have a passport
Mhm.
and a driver's license that don't have
The
the
same
gender
marker.
matches.
Mhm.
So I'm afraid to go out of the country.
Mhm.
What is happening with our passports?
Mhm.
Because I can't get my passport to match.
Mhm.
So again, thank you for all you do. I know that you're a fellow parent of a trans
Yeah.
child, and it means a lot that I have a representative who represents me and my child.
Let's give them some love, everybody. I see you, we love you, we stand with you, and I'm gonna get emotional myself. I'm gonna fight like hell for you and for all our trans kids, for our LGBT communities, because this is another example of cruelty. Trans people are such a tiny percentage of the population of this country, and they have the strength and the courage to be who they fully are. And we should be out there supporting people to do that, not being cruel and targeting them. Um, and so, yes, as you know, it's personal to me. We just introduced the Trans Bill of Rights, reintroduced it. This is my bill that I introduced when I first got into Congress, worked with Lavender Rights and a bunch of other wonderful organizations to put it together and to say we're not always going to be on the defense. We need to be on the offense too. We need to celebrate our trans communities and think about what it means if we had full equality for everybody. And so on the passports, this is a real issue. Obviously, they are not issuing, and hopefully, Felicia, did you give a card to? Felicia's going to give you a card, and we'll see what we can do about your case. But I do, they are. This is the same thing that trans people are going through everywhere. Not going out of the country, not going to see, their grandparents in another country. And unfortunately, they are refusing to issue new passports. And so if you were lucky enough to get one before this administration came in, you might be okay if you got your driver's license changed and if it matches in that way. But it's a very tough time, and I think we'll do everything we can to work on your individual case, and then also to stand up and just refuse to accept that it's not trans kids who are driving up your rents or your grocery prices or stealing your jobs or whatever it is. It's the billionaires who are doing all of that, and we're going to stand strong, stand tough, and stand resilient with all of our trans community. Thank you so much, and our LGBT community.
Thank you, Representative Jayapal, for coming to the north end
Yeah.
of your district.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. I just have a kitchen table issue.
sure.
So I'm sure you all noticed that Eddie Bauer has closed.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
they've been a Seattle institution since 1920, and they've gone through multiple iterations, and we're already facing challenges. But their CEO had cited the tariffs
Yeah,
as one of the reasons,
yeah,
and as the last nail in the coffin.
yeah,
I've noticed also other retailers. We have Great Floors closing Shoreline,
Yeah.
like Costco.
yeah,
I've noticed, as a former retailer, I've noticed anomalies in
Yeah.
inventory in Target and Costco, big retailers who are being, there are whole categories
Yeah,
missing. Children's winter jackets came at Target in January.
yeah,
They're all sitting there.
right.
And Costco didn't have children's snow clothes, things that we would normally
Yeah.
expect to have. It's tariffs. So
One
we're
hundred
seeing on the
percent.
ground the effects.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. There are so many effects of tariffs. And, tariffs, if applied sparingly and strategically, can be effective tools if paired with domestic manufacturing investments, right? If we want to support American manufacturing, we should invest in American manufacturing. And that is the way that you actually ensure that we are creating more jobs here, et cetera, and keeping prices low for consumers. What Trump has done with tariffs makes zero sense. Like it was very difficult to, what did he call it? Liberation Day or something? Whatever it was that he called the day when he announced all the tariffs. And you're looking at the board and trying to figure out how on earth did they come up with these numbers? They make zero sense. And they're levied on our partners like Canada, lumber, coffee, whatever it is, it just becomes a retaliatory thing. And that, of course, leads to trade wars. And so we've been meeting with businesses. I met with the Association of Washington Businesses, hearing directly from a lot of our businesses about what this means for their ability to survive. And that's why we had these discharge petitions to stop these illegal tariffs. We were able to pass this bill. I'm worried that it won't withstand the presidential veto. There's a Supreme Court case, obviously, on tariffs as well. But this is just, it's not really even about isolationism, like America, we're not going to work with the rest of the world. It's actually worse than that, if that's possible. It's about America is the only thing that matters, and we're going to essentially whip you all into shape to disadvantage your countries, your people, and by the way, disadvantage ours too, because none of this actually helps our economy to grow. So we're very much in touch with. I met with Tutabella. Do you have a Tutabella in this? I met with Joe, who's I've known forever. And he was talking about just the price because they have to import all of their tomatoes, all of their everything from Italy, and it's all under tariffs now. So it just becomes impossible. And then, of course, they pass it on to the consumer, right? Because they can only accommodate so much before they close and go out of business. So we're doing everything we can. It is insanity in terms of economic policy, and also unconstitutional, I believe, in a number of ways.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal, for everything you do. You are one of the most amazing congresswomen in the entire country, so I'm so grateful for it. I want to say that one of the things that I have thought a lot about in my history is fascism and how, the whole society can do cruel things.
Yeah.
And in the history of fascism, there is one common thing that really helps start it, and that is the changing of reality, the distortions, the lies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, look at, Holocaust, you can just go on and on, McCarthyism,
Yeah.
What happened in Rwanda, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, Denmark has started to create laws against politicians lying.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, are there laws that we can create? I have one in mind, and maybe that is, maybe we can insist that any taxpayer dollars,
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to spend any taxpayer dollars, it has to be evidence-based.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a really interesting point, and in your research, if you come across those laws, send them to us so that we can, because we are starting to work on, what is our equivalent of Project 2029, right? Our democratic version of that, whether we want to call it that or not, and also Project 2027. Now, we may only have the House, we may not have the Senate or the White House. We will have the House. We may not have the Senate or the White House. But I do think we need to be just as detailed in the changes we have to make to accommodate the new reality that we're in. And the other part of this, I would say, is also how do we stop the lies which are being perpetrated by tech companies and social media companies. And so I really think we have to take on consolidation in these big social media companies everywhere, actually. But this is one area where it directly contributes. The algorithm that these tech companies use has no basis in truth. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's about how many clicks it generates. So, you can be as sensational as you want, and if it generates more clicks, then it gets put out more and it gets onto people's books, and it's all lies. And so when we're debating, we are no longer debating with actual truth. We're debating with lies, right? And so you can't say, like, you have to say, yes, there was an insurrection at the United States Capitol on January 6th. True. That is true, right? No, undocumented immigrants aren't, and dead people are not voting at crazy rates and throwing elections off. That is false. But we have to keep making those statements because people are operating in such different realities. So we're putting together sort of, there's a long list of things that we have to do to really update our democracy and bring truth back in. But you're absolutely right that it's one of the big weapons that authoritarians use is just lies and getting their message across. And it's so much easier now because of the way people consume news and the lack of real, newspapers that are based in, or news outlets that are based in fact. I see so many people that, do I need to start taking a couple at a time? Okay, we're gonna do two at a time, so we'll take two on this side. I'm gonna take notes so I don't forget what your question was, and then we'll go to two on this side, and we'll see if we can get through a few more that way.
Next question is back here.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jim, and I led an effort to design and manufacture airbags. And I actually conducted a tour for Governor Locke. And what I want to do is simplify how you say taxation to billionaires. Here's an example. The tax rate has been reduced 3%. For someone making $50,000 a year, that's $1,500. The billionaire tax rate has been reduced 2.6%. That's $26 billion. So I think if you were to I'd like to have a Zoom with you, 5-10 minutes, just to clarify this so that people understand what's really going on, rather than just say the tax of the billionaires, so people have a more clear example of the person making 50 grand gets $1,500, the person making $1 million,
Yeah.
26 million.
Yeah, no, I think we'll always take. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I'm taking two questions. I got excited about answering you, Jim. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Representative Jayapal. I heard you say some great points that I was originally going to make about how ICE hasn't actually been an institution for all that long, since 2003.
Yeah.
And as someone who has had to comfort my 8-year-old about whether or not ICE is going to harm or kidnap him, I am curious. You mentioned not wanting ICE to continue to exist in its current form, but I'm going to kind of take a page out of your book and ask a yes or no question. Will you go on the record and say that you support abolishing ICE completely?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Let me go to Jim first, and I'll come back to you. So on the billionaires tax, send us whatever you have. I think we also have to think about taxing wealth differently. So we used to think about income taxes, but now when you see that 10 people, 10 billionaires own the same wealth as 50% of the American public, you have to think about how you tax that wealth differently. And so that's why I've introduced an ultramillionaires tax act, and it's pretty simple. It says if you have $50 million or more, then you just pay 2 cents on every dollar. Anyone who's got $50 million or more in the room, I have a campaign you can support. I have a lot of great organizations to put before you. If you have $100 million or more, then you pay 3 cents. It's pretty simple. You still get to keep a bunch of your wealth. We could increase that if you want, but it was a pretty simple way to talk about how we tax wealth. So I think we have to We have to explain it clearly, you're absolutely right, and we have to think about what we're taxing differently, because the level of wealth of such tiny group of people is so intense today, and it's never been like this before. On ICE, I don't use the word abolish only because it often gets used against us. So I say dismantle. I don't care what you call it. I don't think it should exist as it exists. And so I really fundamentally believe it doesn't need to exist. And I've said that consistently and publicly on the record. I introduced a bill around this, which at the time was called the Abolish ICE Bill. That wasn't my name for it. That was the name somebody else gave. But all I was saying is an institution should actually serve a purpose, and the purpose should be lawful, and it should be funded at the level it needs to be funded, not hundred millions times more than that. And so that was happening back in 2019. Now we supercharge this agency with the big bad betrayal bill and with how Trump is using it. So we can argue about words or whatever, and I can explain why I use dismantle. But the theory is the same. It shouldn't exist the way it exists, and it doesn't need to. It hasn't before, it doesn't need to now.
Hi, my name's Nicole, I'm a Berlin resident, like a lot of people here, this is my first town hall. That I've
Yay!
been to, so thanks for having me. I'm here to worry about a lot of things, but I thought I'd keep my question pretty focused on something that I thought you could do for all of us, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I know you were at the Tacoma Detention Center back in May 2025, you tried to go back in January 2026, and you were denied. When are you planning to go back? There's a lot of people who are very worried. There's been reports of sexual abuse, that people being denied medical care. Some of my neighbors have been sent there.
Yeah.
So I'm just personally very worried and would like the congressional oversight at that detention center.
I'm going tomorrow. Can I ask you for a favor? If you have names of people who are in the detention center and you can get a privacy release for us, we can visit them.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, like we fundraised for him to get an attorney, but
okay.
we fundraised for him to get an attorney, but he was deported so
Okay,
quickly that
yeah.
we couldn't even do anything.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. No, as you know, I've been, I think we did the first human rights abuses report on the Tacoma Detention Center back in 2008. I've been to that detention center so much, but yeah, it's funny, I'm going tomorrow. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to take two? Okay, we'll do two more. All right, okay. I'm so bad at waiting for the second question. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so, my wife and I, we've been organizing in dirt quotes for a little bit, just because of how crazy things have gotten. And I guess, like, my question is, what's the plan? Because I'm very concerned that we've already had neighbors that were taken and deported after being taken to the detention center. We know that during the World Cup, ICE is going to be here in force, and that once the World Cup is over, they're going to be here with nothing to do. I guess my question is there a plan, or I've gone to what? Or are we on our own? I've asked the city council, I've asked the city police, that it's always been the same, is that there's nothing anyone can do. I guess I just really hope the plan isn't that people like me and everyone here are like following around ICE agents, trying to record them like in Minneapolis, and then some of us get blinded and killed.
Thank you for the question. Next. Did you want to do one more?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am really honored that you represent us, and I will probably get a little quivery because I get nervous with public speaking.
Oh,
but
you're
it's
good.
important.
We appreciate her standing up, right? Everybody? Yeah.
So I hear that some of the issues that are most important to me center on bodily autonomy, both in terms of reproductive rights and reproductive justice, as well as trans rights and trans justice. I'm particularly concerned around continued access to healthcare in both of these spaces.
Yeah.
In ways in which some of our medical institutions have proactively complied with laws and stopped particular healthcare before the law has even been passed. So I'm concerned about how we can continue to protect access and protect especially our trans loved ones and trans community.
Yeah, such an important question. Thank you. On the first question about ICE and a plan, We are obviously coordinating, speak to the governor regularly, work with the mayor. There's a coalition table called Washington for All that's led by One America and the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, WISN, which you should definitely check out if you haven't. They've really been coordinating a lot of the rapid response. And so we have a plan in that sense, but I don't want to, I'm just going to be straight with you. This is not a government that listens to plans. And when we stand up and cheer for the Minnesotans, it is because they are exhibiting such bravery and courage. And they are the ones that are out there filming, and they are the ones that are out there catching things on video and operating in rapid response networks and delivering tens of thousands of meals through their churches or their community centers or walking kids to school. This is an all hands on deck project. That's what authoritarians do, is they take it out of the hands of institutions and it is left to the people. And I'm sorry to say that. I don't want you to have to be the ones. I don't want to say, I wish I had a way to say, yeah, we got a plan, we're all good, go watch the World Cup, relax. That's not the situation we're in. And we're all gonna have to figure out, I've had to figure it out, right? Because I've been threatened. I've had a guy with a gun show up at my door. I never thought that I would maybe die trying to be in the Capitol to certify the election in 2020, but I almost died. That wasn't my plan. And it's not really, it shouldn't be the plan of anyone in the room that has to be the case, but that is the situation we're in. And so, yes, we're trying to do as much as we can. We have learned so much from Minnesota. I did a hearing a week after Renee Good was shot in Minnesota, and I met with the superintendent, and I met with the mayor, and I met with everybody, the attorney general. We got lessons out of Minnesota. We met with community members. It's been inspiring in part because it is so above and beyond what anybody should have to do. And so just remember that two things. Strength emerges in times of crisis. We don't know what we're capable of in terms of strength until we're really tested. And we've seen that in countries around the world. We haven't really had to deal with it here. And the second thing is that courage isn't acting in the absence of fear. It is acting in the presence of fear. And so I just want to validate that it's scary. It shouldn't be that it has to fall on you or any of us. It should be that your elected representative can solve it. And believe me, if I could, I would. But we're going to need everybody in this room. And so the plan is to replicate Minnesota, to have rapid response networks, to have people who are willing to go with the whistles and be trained. And if you can't do that, there's so many other ways. Mutual aid assistance, walking people to school or to work, driving people home. There are lots of ways that anyone can be engaged, but it is going to be a project of the people, because as much as we plan and as much as we try to ban ICE from doing certain things or CBP from detaining and deporting people, as much as I go to the detention center, and we've gotten people out of the detention center, by the way, because of our visits, it is still going to require all of us. Oh, sorry, I had another question. Reproductive and bodily autonomy. This is just so absolutely critical. And one of the things we've been trying to do is just get people to be more courageous. Why are these medical institutions caving? Why are academic institutions caving? Why are we not standing up and speaking out about these things? Because our reproductive health, our trans kids are suffering now because so many places across the country are no longer offering gender affirming care and surgeries. And so it has been really, really challenging. And so we're trying to hold off federal laws that the Republicans are trying to push that limit reproductive access. And we've been somewhat successful. We can't hold off state laws, but we have won ballot initiatives in certain states to preserve reproductive freedom. And we are trying to do whatever we can here in Washington to expand care so that we can actually serve, other states that no longer have reproductive care. Trans care, the Attorney General has filed a lawsuit, as you know, around this. So we are trying to do what we can, but you're right to be concerned because these are fundamental freedoms that we have to protect, and they go to who we are and our ability to make choices about our own bodies. That's really ultimately what it's about. So thank you so much for having the courage to stand up and engage and to ask that question because it's important to so many people out there. Thank you.
Congresswoman, we're gonna rapid fire those 4 questions on that side.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to try to stick to my job of not answering immediately. All right.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out here to Lake Forest Park. This is my 3rd town hall
Wonderful.
that I've been to. My question is about healthcare. I'm a retired RN. The last year has been a nightmare, for so many people having their healthcare limited, taken away, extra requirements. It feels like healthcare is a luxury.
Yeah.
Not a right.
Yeah.
I'm a advocate for universal healthcare either at the state or national level. And what I was wondering is, since we have this really created huge healthcare crisis, how might we be using that to advance Medicare for all?
Yeah. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for all you're doing for us and representing us in Congress. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we all do. But there's a lot of important discussion about the highest priority topics here for us tonight, but there's one that you should also pay attention to, and that's the increasing use of artificial intelligence
Yes.
and automation.
Yes.
We've had lots of types of automation in society for decades, and it works really well most of the time because potential hazards it could introduce have been well understood and mitigated. But now AI can enable more types of functionality and automation we never really thought possible.
Yeah.
And so how do we stay ahead of that
Mm-hmm.
when historically standards and regulation has always lagged behind technology development? And I think AI can really do a lot to help us if we apply it responsibly, but sometimes it can be applied recklessly or even maliciously.
Totally.
What's Congress doing to help out with this, and what can we do to help you in Congress trying to stay ahead of this?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, I too, of course, would like to thank you for all you do for, and all that you've accomplished as our representative. And I'd like to go back to the midterms quickly. And I'm sure all of us are very, very worried and concerned about the midterms. And with all that Trump has blatantly said that he is attempting to do, and I'm worried that we don't have enough guardrails or checks. I mean, if he did an executive order, what would that take? How would we prevent him from rigging the election and so that everybody's not sure that we've had a fair election?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a retired Navy vet, and my concern is that, as CNN reports today, we're prepared to strike Iran this weekend. How do we overcome that kind of use of our military in these illegal, unethical, immoral actions?
Thank you. That I was just commenting on this right before we got here. Okay, let me go through the questions one at a time. Healthcare. First of all, thank you, retired RN. Thank you for being in the healthcare system and taking care of people. We really appreciate all of our healthcare workers who are just having such a hard time in this system. This is the thing, this is the silver lining that I choose to see about the fact that they've destroyed the healthcare system. We knew the healthcare system was broken here. We were patching it up. We were doing what we could. The Affordable Care Act did expand healthcare for millions, tens of millions of Americans. But we know that the insurance companies expanded their profits just as quickly and figured out how to game the Affordable Care Act. So we have an opportunity now with Medicare for All, and separately, I have something called the Medicare for All PAC that is funding organizing at the ground to really help people understand what Medicare is for all is, how to fight for it, how to get more people on the bill. And we've already added 5 new members of Congress, not from progressive districts, actually. Jared Moskowitz from Florida signed on. Shamari Figures from Alabama signed on. In fact, I have a podcast called The Power You Have. Check it out. And there's an interview that I do with Shamari where he talks about in Alabama, the healthcare system collapsed. And he's like, we have to have a new healthcare system. We have a chance to build it from the bottom up. The polling is on our side. The people are on our side. We need to fight the corporate lobbyists, and we need to get more Democrats to be bold in actually embracing it instead of fighting it. AI and automation, just such an important question. And I just introduced a bill with Senator Markey to ban facial recognition, AI and facial recognition technology. We're kind of looking at AI across the board and how it's being used. And you're absolutely right that Congress is always behind. You know, I was on the antitrust subcommittee when we did a 16-month investigation of the big tech, the 4 big tech companies. And we passed a suite of bills around that passed in a bipartisan way through committee and then got stalled before they went to the floor around the consolidation of these tech companies and their utilization of things like AI. Now it's beyond those companies. But I think what's important is when we watched the Senate hearing with those 4 tech CEOs, it was embarrassing. You know, people were holding up like an iPhone and asking the Google CEO about their iPhone. It was like really behind the times. And so we did a lot of work to make sure that we were on top of it, but we got to do that with AI. The problem I'm going to point out here is we have been drafting an AI, like, you know, different pieces of legislation to look at AI and how it's used, for example, in housing, how it's used in healthcare. Now they want to use AI to make your healthcare decisions in what I call Medicare disadvantage, because it's not really Medicare, it's privatized Medicare that is being used essentially. And the problem now is the AI companies are putting hundreds of billions of dollars into buying elections and electing people that will never actually pass any legislation that restricts them. And so this has been a real challenge. It's why when you elected me in 2016, I was one of only 4 members of Congress to never take any PAC money, never have, never will. And I have a bipartisan bill, by the way, to ban stock trading for members of Congress. Don't trade on Wall Street if you want to trade, but if you're in Congress, then work for the benefit of your constituents. But I am very worried about the money in AI. We do have a bunch of proposals that we're still trying to move. On the midterms, I mean, I think I sort of spoke to this already, but I think we're just going to have to be really prepared to go to court for executive orders to challenge the constitutionality of things and to make sure that we're protecting our voting systems and turning as many people out to vote as possible. We win by turning out so many people that they can't even challenge the election, right? And so we just have to work on all those levels to try and protect our midterms. And then to our retired Navy vet, thank you so much for your service to our country. We really appreciate it. And there are so many vets and folks serving in the military that are horrified by what's happening and are being put in this incredibly awful position of carrying out unconstitutional strikes on Venezuela, on countries around the world. And now with the announcement about Iran, we will have, I think, a war powers resolution on the floor. But again, the problem with all of these is they require bipartisan support. Now I know I can count on Thomas Massie on this, and maybe there's 1 or 2 others, but my hope is that we return to a place where the president doesn't have the authority to just declare war on Iran. It doesn't, that is not how it works. They're your taxpayer dollars. That's why the authority for declaring war falls to Congress, because we are supposed to debate the consequences of war. And I believe that there are real consequences, long-term consequences for the American people, and that the majority of Americans do not want more wars that go on forever. They want investment in diplomacy, in development, in the other tools that we have to build peace in the world. And so I can't tell you what's going to happen, but we're going to fight back on the declaration of any declaration of war that comes from the president without authorization, and hope that we do the work and hope that we can find Republicans as well to be with us in that.
All right, Congresswoman, we're gonna rapid fire these last 6 questions.
Okay. We went from 1 to 2 to 4 to 6. Okay, I got it.
Hello, my name is Rafael. This is my second town hall. My question is more of a hypothetical. If the SAVE Act were to pass, how would Democrats plan to combat that?
The SAVE Act?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the light of jurisdictional hurdles in investigating the killings of Good and Freddie, is there future legislation that is being considered that would empower state investigators to hold federal agencies accountable for actions of federal agents that are committed in their own state?
Yeah.
Hopefully that there could be bipartisan support because it's a state first issue.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
So, with American citizens being attacked and killed in the streets by the federal government, and then I don't think any of us really expected the real horrors and review that we've seen come out in the Epstein files, but it's just what this report seems to be being allowed us to see so far. And then on top of that, with the attempts to interfere in our elections that we've already seen so far, the SAVE Act that people have been talking about, how are we as Americans supposed to feel comfortable with the system continuing as is, with our government continuing, when we're essentially being ruled by the Epstein administration?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Dion. I've written several times. I am a constituent in your district, and I am a person with experience of homelessness. I was homeless for 11 years. And I'm just wondering how you intend to mitigate the effects of President Trump's ending what was the executive order on ending crime and disorder in American streets, and how you use lived experience to advise you in that process.
Great, thank you, Dion.
Woman, I think I speak for a minority of the audience when I say I don't really remember 9/11. I don't really remember, the Great Recession, but due to a series of fiscal and monetary policy decisions, we've always managed to keep asset prices up. And young people like me, we really feel like there is not much of a way to reasonably afford the house that our parents grew up in or anything like that. And any kind of going back to regressing or depression of asset prices would affect your, kind of other constituents as well, or affordability.
Sorry, can you just, what was the question of that?
I guess addressing affordability.
Addressing affordability, got it, yeah. Yeah. Hi, sorry, I was just making my note. Go ahead.
Good evening, you're an inspiration. Thank you for all that you do. My name is Vijay. I live locally. I'm an immigrant, and I also run a small local business called Always Summer Ice Cream Cafe, right downstairs.
Oh, you're very popular.
Thank you, everybody. So the SBA loans have been critical for us to take leads. We just got established last year. But I hear starting this year soon, they will not be extending SBA loans because of new regulation, to non-citizens, starting March. Is this on your radar? I was curious.
Thank you, Vijay. Okay, let me go through those. Great set of questions. Okay, Raphael, the SAVE Act, if it passes, what do we do? from my lips to God's ears, as they say, I don't think it will have the votes in the Senate to pass. Lisa Murkowski has already come out against it. I think that we will be able to defeat it. I don't think it can get 60 votes, but it is dangerous nonetheless. And so, you know, this is another one where we are just doing everything we can to defeat it at the federal level, but also to defeat efforts that are happening at the states across the country. So we've got different court challenges. We have organizing that's happening in different states that are trying to do some of these things. And we just have to continue to do that. Immunity, this is a really good question. So this is one of the things that we have put in our list of demands, but we also have legislation that has been drafted around being able to hold these federal officials accountable. It isn't the case that they can't be in all circumstances, but there are ways that we can make it much easier to do that and to require that these people can be prosecuted by state officials as well. So we do have legislation drafted around that. The Epstein class that controls everything, and how do we trust our government given that, I think was the question. And this is something I've really been wrestling with. I mean, I've been reading those files. They give me nightmares. I mean, really, they give me nightmares. And these are people, including on the Democratic side. I mean, I never liked Larry Summers. I never liked his economic policy. And now and I never liked him as a human being. And now I really don't like him as a human. And I'm trying to be a really good Buddhist about this and forgive. But, it is really, it's disturbing. And I'm going to give a deeper answer on this, and I'm sorry for this, but I really think we have to change our assessment of success. And we need to have a complete redefinition of what it means to be successful and who we listen to that is successful. And we need to start really valuing and lifting up morals and values and compassion and it cannot be about wealth. It cannot be about connection to power. It has to be about basic humanity. And it's a much deeper question that you're asking, and that I think we're all kind of trying to grapple with. So forgive me for the deeper question, but it is part of my meditation in the morning, because I think that's what's happened. Our society has been completely corrupted. And there is an Epstein class. There absolutely is. And we have to separate ourselves from that. And that's going to take a lot of work. It does tie a little bit to, is it Dion's question about homelessness and lived experience? I mean, we have to start valuing different kinds of experience. And so when I crafted my bill around homelessness and housing, it's called the Housing is a Human Right Act. And it really invests substantially in housing, building more affordable housing, but also in the rental market, in wraparound services. The federal government has disinvested from housing, from investing in housing. We've kind of left it to the localities, but the localities don't have the ability to create that much housing, whether it's rental housing or permanent housing. And then on top of that, you have private equity that have come into these markets and sort of taken over the algorithms and driven up rents and driven up affordability of homes. And then what we do is we criminalize people who can't afford housing. And we have to stop that, because poverty and homelessness are not moral failures. They are actually policy failures. And we've got to figure out, we have to figure out how to not criminalize homelessness. And that's why I was part of the amicus brief to challenge Trump's actions on criminalizing of homelessness. And I'm going to continue to speak out about it. And we've got to have humane solutions that include really helping people to get the supports that they need, and recognize that everybody deserves to have parks that are safe and sidewalks that are safe, and they deserve to have homes. Because when you don't have a home, you can't apply for a job and have an address to send your applications to. You can't take a shower in the morning. You don't have a place that is just yours where you can really collect yourself and think about things. You're worried about your own safety. So we got to think about this completely differently. We have the ability to end homelessness in America. It actually would not cost that much money to do that. I spent $38 billion on these new retrofitting of warehouses to incarcerate immigrants. The estimate is we could end homelessness with $20 billion. They spent 38 billion, we can end it with 20 billion. So there is a lot that we can do. We don't suffer from scarcity as a country, we suffer from greed of a few. And so we have the money to do these things. And just to the question of lived experience, we always, on every bill, whether it's our Trans Bill of Rights, whether it's our Housing as a Human Right bill, whether it's our Dignity for Detained Immigrants, we always develop it with a coalition of people that have lived experience in the issue. That's just a fundamental for me. When I have hearings, I always have directly impacted people. That's just how I believe it should be done. And that's what I think leads to the most effective policy. Yes, this is addressing affordability, and particularly for the younger generations who have never been in a situation where somebody could afford a home, right? A lot of people talk about it. Our parents, our grandparents maybe will say, yeah, you know, when I was 30, I owned my first home. Like I paid $40,000 for a home. Who can think about that today in this generation? And I feel like we've really failed young people, and we're telling you to have hope in something that you've never experienced. And that's true for college education, that's true for housing, that's true for, you know, everything, right? Healthcare. And so I really feel like this affordability question, whatever you want to call it, but delivering real impact for people today, to be able to have life be better tomorrow, is one of the critical things we have to do as Democrats. And had we, in Build Back Better, when I was chair of the Progressive Caucus and I held the line over and over and over again, because I insisted that we had to pass Build Back Better, that would have, and we passed it, and then because of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, it died in the Senate. That would have been affordable childcare for everyone. That would have been the biggest investment in housing we've ever made. And if we had done those things, who knows what would have happened, right? We have to get refocused as a Democratic Party on delivering for working people, on raising the minimum wage, on universal childcare, universal healthcare, housing, education. Those are the things that allow people to live and to thrive, not just survive. And that's what will bring people back, including young people, into believing that we are really a government that can deliver for people. And climate change. There's so many that I left off that list, but yes. Okay, Vijay, first of all, you are really popular, so I gotta come try your cafe. That is not on my radar, so let me check into it, and our staff will give you a card so that we can, okay, you already got it, great. And we will check on it, and this is part of what they're doing, Vijay, is they're trying to use every possible means of going after people who are immigrants. And it's not, you know, if you're on a visa, they make it harder for you to get that visa, or they kick you out. If you are getting loans because you're running a successful business and the entire commons explodes in applause for you because they all love your restaurant, you still, you know, they're trying to stop you from getting loans. So let us look into that, and we'll get back to you. All right, everybody, I think we got through everybody. So I want to just end with this and say that my heart is full tonight. I know there's a lot of fear and a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety and a lot of trepidation about what we're facing as a country and what we're facing as individuals and families and communities. And at the same time, what I see in this room is just so much love and so much belief in each other and so much commitment to showing up on is it a Wednesday night? On a Wednesday night. And staying for a couple of hours to be in community with people, to figure out how we actually fight together, peacefully, non-violently, for the future that we deserve. So I want to thank you for just giving me so much hope and resilience and pride in this district that I represent. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night.